On May 28th of 1980, 32-year-old Dorothy Scott was attending a meeting at Swinger's Psych Shop, where her father was a co-owner and she worked as a back office secretary, when she noticed her co-worker Conrad Bastron looked ill. Seeing he had a red swollen mark on his arm, Dorothy and another co-worker, Pam Head, sprung into action and quickly drove Conrad to the emergency room at UCI Medical Center in Irvine, California. Her quick thinking just may have saved Conrad's life. The mark was from a black widow spider. But in a cruel twist of fate, it would be Dorothy, not Conrad, who would never leave the hospital alive. If you enjoy true crime stories, please make sure to subscribe below and set the notification bell to all to be notified every time I upload a new video. If you'd like to discuss this case further with me, don't miss tomorrow's one-year anniversary live stream on Sunday, July 12th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. We have all new equipment, PC, camera, microphone, and lights, and we're taking this channel to a whole new level. Oftentimes when something bad happens to a person, people seem to describe them as one of the best people they know, completely pure. But with Dorothy, this really did seem to be the case. All around her had positive things to say. A devout Christian, clean living, good mom, close with family, a good worker and pleasure to be around. A friend even described Dorothy's life as, quote, as dull as a phone book. Hardly the kind of person you would expect a tragedy to happen to. Dorothy didn't even have a steady boyfriend and only dated occasionally, opting instead to spend most of her time as a doting mother to her son Sean. But it became obvious that someone was very interested in Dorothy, because that's when the calls started. She had begun receiving ever-worsening phone calls in the months leading up to her disappearance, from a man who would at first profess his love for her, then threaten her. He would go into things Dorothy really had no interest in, such as explaining his daily routine. After all, Dorothy had no idea who this man even was. She recognized his voice, but she couldn't place it. The police, however, thought they might be able to. Dorothy had a second job right next door to her first at Custom John's head shop. The previous owner, Michael Butler, seemed obsessed with her. He lived alone and was rumored to be into some pretty strange stuff, such as cults. Dorothy's caller called her at both her home and work, and Butler would have had the means to do this by virtue of knowing her work schedule. But no evidence against him could ever be found. The calls continued, and Dorothy became more and more shaken. In one, the man warned her, quote, "When I get you alone, I will cut you up into bits so no one will ever find you." In another, he instructed her to go outside because he had left something for her. And when she went outside, there was a dead rose atop her car. A week before Dorothy's disappearance, she began taking self-defense lessons and even considered buying a gun. She should have. On the night of May 28, 1980, Dorothy dropped her son off at her parents' before work, which was routine. While there, she put on a red scarf, said goodbye to her parents and son, and went off to the meeting. When Conrad was finally discharged from the hospital, he joined back up with Dorothy and Pam, who were in the waiting room. As he and Pam waited in line for a prescription, Dorothy went to go pull her car around front, making a quick stop at the restroom on her way out. After picking up the prescription, Pam and Conrad walked outside, and the patient friends waited between 10 and 20 minutes for Dorothy without sight of her. Finally, in the distance, her car made its way towards them. But something was off. The car was speeding. The headlights were blinding, so much so that they couldn't even see inside the car. And then it sped right by them, taking a right turn out of the parking lot and speeding off into the night. It was perplexing to say the least, but 1980 California was a world long before cell phones, so the two friends sat and waited 2 more hours, assuming Dorothy must have had an emergency with her son or something. But she never came back. After calling her mother Vera in search for her, they began to realize something was amiss and contacted police. But police didn't seem to share their alarm. After all, Dorothy was grown. As inconsiderate as it may have been, if she wanted to leave her friend stranded at the hospital, she was within her legal rights to do so. But just hours later, around 4:30 a.m. the following morning, Dorothy's white 1973 station wagon was found set on fire in an alleyway 10 miles away in Santa Ana. It was becoming clear something horrible had happened to Dorothy Scott. And a week later, Dorothy's mother began to receive the calls. "Are you related to Dorothy Scott?" the man at the other end of the line asked the helpless Vera. "I've got her." He would call Vera almost every Wednesday for the next 4 years. Usually short calls, short enough that they couldn't be traced, and usually when Vera was alone. While instincts may lead one to want to spread the news as far and wide as possible to get the word out, police often tell families to keep the details of an investigation quiet. The reason may be shocking to some, but people claim to be responsible for crimes they had nothing to do with. Sometimes for fame and recognition, others for nothing more than a cruel joke. But keeping specifics of a case out of the public ensures that if someone does know the details of a case, that they learned it firsthand, and not from newspapers or on a television program. So as difficult as it was, Vera and Dorothy's father, Jacob, abided by these rules as they prayed for a break in the case that would return their beloved daughter home. One night in August of '84, it wasn't Vera who was home to answer the calls, but Jacob, and the man hung up. He would never call the home again. And after 4 full years of no progress, Jacob was tired. He wanted results. He wanted his baby girl home. In a desperate attempt, he called the Santa Ana Register newspaper and told them of the story. The very same morning the story was run, Santa Ana Register messaging editor Pat Riley received a phone call. It was from the man. "I killed her," the man told Riley. "I killed Dorothy Scott. She was my love. I caught her cheating with another man. She denied having somebody else. I killed her." The voice on the other line sobbed. He knew details of Dorothy's night. He knew about the spider bite. He made mention of the red scarf Dorothy had changed into at her parents' house that night. Despite the caller knowing these details, her family still held out hope for a positive resolution. Unfortunately, it would never come. On August 4th of 1984, a construction worker and his dog discovered charred skeletal remains on Santa Ana Canyon Road. A turquoise ring and watch were found. Vera recognized them. They were Dorothy's. The watch was stopped at 12:30 a.m. on May 29th, just about an hour after Dorothy's vehicle had sped off out of the parking lot. The bones were identified as belonging to Dorothy Scott. An autopsy couldn't determine the cause of death. A suspect was never brought forth. Co-workers were questioned. The father of Dorothy's son, Sean Dennis Terry, was looked into, but had an ironclad alibi. Michael Butler, despite being a person of interest, was never really a suspect due to a lack of any evidence. Sean does believe Butler was the caller of his mother. But Michael Butler passed away in 2014, and Dorothy's case remains unsolved. What do you think happened to Dorothy? Do you believe Michael Butler was the caller? If not, then who? Do you believe the same man making the calls to both Vera and Dorothy was responsible for what ultimately happened to her? Why didn't he want to speak to Jacob? Was it simply because Jacob was a man? Or do you think he was worried Jacob would recognize his voice? Was it perhaps Butler, who worked right next door to Jacob and was worried about the father finding out his true identity? Discuss your theories in the comments below and share the video to help spread awareness about Dorothy's case. If you'd like to discuss this case and more with me, make sure to tune in to the 1-year anniversary live stream tomorrow, Sunday, July 12th at 8 p.m. Eastern. I'll see you there. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening, and please consider checking out some of the many other true crime videos on my channel. Please don't forget to both subscribe and click the notification bell so that you can be notified every time I upload a new video. I'm Jason Hebert, and I'll see you next time.